Hello, 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 and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our part 2 live discussion all about bread. And I am so happy to introduce the lovely Patricia Bowerman, who is the health revolution activist, yay, who gave us an absolutely incredible insight last Thursday into bread and all about the history and all that kind of stuff. And we were talking about gut health, touched on gut health a little bit, and about the importance of bread and how it affects our diet. So Patricia, really fantastic to have you on again today. Welcome, welcome. And then we've got the wonderful Lee Ryan all the way over there in Perth, Australia. I know it's your evening, Lee. So how are you? All good? All looking glowing as the weather's lovely and warm and sunny over there?
Yeah, everything's fine in the land down under. Temperatures of up to over 40 degrees here in Perth, Celsius.
No.
So very hot, a nice summer beach weather.
Well, Patricia and I are here in cold, wet, dismal UK, and we've had really cold temperatures. But anyway, that's all good. But for those of you that don't know me, I'm Lisa Smith. From Genesis Healthcare, part of GH Global. We are in the UK and Australia, and we are doing this series all about gut health and about bread. So last week we touched on the history of wheat and how good bread used to be in the Roman times, and obviously how those those techniques, how the Romans used to kind of make their bread and how they used to live. And Patricia, you very amazingly broke down some of the components of the processing of bread and how it kind of comes about. And it was so interesting to learn all those little things about, what makes bread so tasty, because we all love it, don't we? We all love the smell of bread, but there's so many people now that just cannot eat it. They can't eat it. It affects their gut. It gives them, people that become celiac. More and more people now becoming celiac, and goes on to Crohn's disease, all sorts of really horrible things, irritable bowel syndrome, that kind of thing. So can we look today at, the commercial processing of bread and, the impact that has on our health? Over to you, Patricia.
Well, yes, we can. Well, thank you so much for having me back again. I love, this is one of my favorite topics because I've been a bread lover all my life, but I had Crohn's disease. So, I had to be careful what I ate. And long journey, but it's been a fruitful journey. And now I've encountered people, celiac, gluten intolerant, and we're getting them to eat bread again. So last week we did look at the history of bread. Roman and Egyptian times, the armies fought on bread. Why could they do that? They couldn't do it now. They couldn't go to Tesco and buy a loaf of bread and go fight battles, could they?
So what? I think so. Be a bit awkward.
It would be. But what is the difference? So we looked at the way that the wheat was grown then without pesticides, the way it was stone ground. So today it's roller milled, completely different. And of course, today we have the pesticides on it. But it was a whole grain because they just took the wheat and they ground it and they made the flour. Now, the commercial food industry breaks down that whole grain into its different components. First thing they do is take the germ out, which contains the omega oils. They say it's because it extends the shelf life of the bread, but actual fact, they're selling off that oil to the pharmaceutical and cosmetic industries because they can get a lot more money from them than they can from us in a loaf of bread. So, and then they're taking out the nutrients. So let's just look at the label on a loaf of bread, because we're all starting to read labels, aren't we, on our shampoo and our shower gel.
Sure.
Yeah. Bit daunting, but we feel like we're being a little more responsible reading the label. Well, sometimes
Mm.
what they're telling us is not the whole story.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So a very popular loaf of bread, I won't mention the name, but I know it makes supposedly makes a lovely toast. Lots of my friends used to eat it. So the first ingredient is wheat flour.
Mm.
What does that mean? It doesn't say whole grain. If it were whole grain, they'd want to boast about that. So it's probably not whole grain. They don't even say whole meal. They just say wheat flour. That could be what they're sweeping up off the floor, to be
Gosh.
honest. Then in brackets, they have calcium, iron, niacin, and thiamine. Well, why is that? Because it's added back in, because they've stripped it all out. They stripped all the nutrients out if the glyphosate didn't kill them off first. So this is non-organic, so it most certainly has glyphosate. But let's just look at the calcium.
Mm.
So we know that there are different forms of calcium. We know we need calcium, but they're different forms. So a few years ago, a very popular calcium supplement was derived from coral. Now, some people got upset because it was depleting the coral reefs, which is true. But another problem that wasn't mentioned is the molecular size of that coral-derived calcium. It was so large, it was causing heart problems as the blood flowed through the heart.
Gosh.
So you need to know your calcium, you need to know your magnesium, your selenium, you know, the different supplements. But also it's probably synthetic, because that's a lot cheaper than naturally derived. And you can get your calcium, more calcium from broccoli than you can get from certainly from calcium in a loaf of bread or a glass of milk even. But then they add in yeast. So that's a commercial yeast. That's not the lovely, naturally occurring yeast from proper fermentation. And our body recognizes the natural processes. And then they add, and I don't know why, rapeseed oil. So our lovely, long fermented sourdough bread, we don't put oil in that. Now, rapeseed oil, I know, gets more glyphosate than a lot of crops. So much so the bees have vacated the rapeseed fields. So if it's not organic rapeseed oil, then you want to question that as well.
Yeah.
And then they added soya flour. They added soya flour to the wheat flour.
Oh,
That's
No
interesting.
mention of it being GMO, and we know soya is top of
GMO.
the list for GMO.
Yeah, that's right.
And then preservatives. There were 3 E numbers in this loaf of bread. So shelf life, they already taken the oil out to extend the shelf life. Now they're going to put preservatives in to extend the shelf life. And then flour treatments, and that's all it says is flour treatments. I don't know what that means, but I probably don't want to eat it. And then flavoring. Well, what tastes better? What tastes better than this?
I could eat that now.
This is my gorgeous little organic, long fermented Chilean cheese sourdough bread.
Wow, delish.
Even without the Chilean cheese, it tastes absolutely gorgeous.
Wow.
So that's and then a bread like that is going to digest in half an hour. And then you're hungry again because your body's not gotten the nutrients out of it. But our bread, you know, my bread, that's satisfying for a good 2 hours. Because when they roller mill the flour, it just squishes it flat. And it just goes right through you.
Obliterates it.
But that when they stone grind it and they rip it and shred it, and it's a rough exterior, and your body has to work at it to extract those nutrients. So it's busy and it's happy. It knows what it's doing. That is,
it's quite frightening, isn't it? When you think about, you know, processed food these days, you know, does processing make a difference? I know you've touched on this, but does it make a difference? I know it gives the shelf life of food, you know, maybe an extra day, an extra week, an extra 2 weeks, whatever. Gives it the color, gives it the, yeah, or even months, gives it the lovely color, the fresh kind of, you know, does it enhance the smell? Does it enhance the color? I just, it frightens me now because we are educating ourselves on, you know, food, the food that goes into our bodies. You know, what is actually happening to it? Does it make a difference?
It makes a difference to our health, and it makes a difference to their profit margins. So that's the, you know, the either end of the spectrum. But we are, well, I think we have to take some responsibility for that, because as I mentioned last week, you look at bread and we want it to all look the same. You know, this bread is slice to slice to slice. They're not the same. Loaf to loaf to loaf, they're not the same. But that's okay. You know, we need to maybe, I don't know, not be so aware of how things look and go a little bit deeper. When all those loaves of bread are the same, all lined up, and you know, oh, that's nice and soft, that's nice and soft, that's nice and soft. Is that the criteria really? And we need to realize that we're being marketed to quite heavily. The pretty packaging, telling us what they want us to focus on. They even do drive our focus to certain words. So we need to dig a little deeper. It's not impossible to read the labels and understand. And when we're talking about bread, it's flour, water, and salt. Flour, water, and salt. Incredible. Organic flour, whole grain flour. I'm very fortunate to get a sprouted organic whole grain flour, which I think Lisa's going to get her hands on, because we will ship. But Leon, sorry, I don't know.
I know. Somehow I've got to try and find someone here in Australia that that has it, so that I can buy some.
And there, a lot of the ancient grains are being revived now.
That's incredible. Really, really incredible. So, I mean, if we were looking at, you know, how processed foods and these, all of these additives, how is that affecting our gut now for people that enjoy bread? For people that love that warm buttered toast in the morning? I know that I used to be a huge lover of warm crumpets with that really melting butter. But I know you've got a little secret up your sleeve, haven't you, Patricia? Because you make crumpets out of sourdough. And I am going to be picking your brains for that, because I've seen it. They look amazing. But anyway, that's for another session. But
it is for another session. Well, so the bad part. So the processed food. So processed food caters to our sense of taste and sight. It looks good. It smells good. Well, it doesn't smell good to me anymore, but I used to. My mother was a world's worst cook. Everything came out of a tin, a packet, instant, you know, prefabricated food was my start in life. But with those additives, your body doesn't recognize them. If they're not bioavailable, your body doesn't know what to do. So then it has to stop and look at it. It has to maybe attack it. And if you have an autoimmune disease, which I've had, you don't want that. You want, you know, we need to boost our immune system in a positive way. And so we need to give it the nutrients. But glyphosate is one of the worst things on this planet, and a huge contributing factor to what we're dealing with today, because it's sprayed as a convenience for farmers to kill the weeds, but then it's sprayed a second time as a desiccant to dry the crop out so they can get it into manufacturing faster. And wheat is top of the list, of the list. And it does penetrate the crop fiber. It destroys the vitamins and the minerals and the amino acids, which is the whole reason we eat it. And then it destroys the communication pathway in the cells of the plant. You know, plant is a living thing, and those cells communicate just like ours do. But we, you know, we don't have a shikimate pathway in our cells, but we do have in our gut bacteria cells. So our gut bacteria cells are, as you go down the colon, farther down, they increase in number. So we've got a huge shikimate pathway communication network in our gut. And with all these gut issues, the celiac, the gluten intolerance, the Crohn's, and other things, I mean, you can lump cancers into there too, because that's a cellular replication problem. And then you've got the leaky gut, which is allowing stuff that shouldn't get into your bloodstream to get in because there's no, that mesh is broken down.
Sure.
So all of those things, glyphosate is absolutely destroying. And when you consider 80% of your neurotransmitters are in your gut, more so than your brain, we need to consider that gut bacteria very much so. But then we think, okay, so we're going to stop the bad stuff coming in. Well, what if we've already let some of that bad stuff in? What do we do? Well, there's a way to detoxify that. We hear a lot about detoxifying, drinking this detox tea and all these things. You need to go deeper than that. You need to go into your gene expression, which we can now do.
That is so incredible.
We activate cellular pathways because, you know, our DNA is not etched in stone. Just because my grandmother and my mother had heart disease, I now know I don't have to. We can rewrite that DNA. We can repair the damage, but it has to come from a cellular molecular level. And we can do that now and then start, you know, detox years of stuff and then just do a daily detox and just keep it all at bay. And that's really the focus, I think, for now going forward is to have a proper detox. You don't want to do it yourself sort of detox, because you might be getting rid of the good stuff before it has a chance to get in and do its job. You need to look at the science.
That's right.
We need to be very science-based going forward. Science-based with our food and our approaches to health. So a question I ask people: who is the gatekeeper of your health span? And we need to consider those things. But it's all good news. It's all good news, and it's simple. And we going back to basics of how we resource our food and how we make our food really turn us around.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, you know, you touched on the glyphosate.
Glyphosate.
Glyphosate. Yeah, I mean, you know, you can tell, can't you? It almost speaks cancer to me. I know that's probably really, you know.
It's been proven. You're not off target. It's been proven. So.
You know,
and I think something that probably people aren't aware about, because I am celiac and part of my journey is that when you start to investigate the E numbers on food and you actually do some research of your own and just find out exactly with those E numbers and find out whether they're good or bad for you. And you find that there are so many of these E numbers that are in our foods because they're put in there to preserve that food. So, you know, and I'm not sure about the UK, but here in Australia, and I probably shouldn't say it, but there's a product that they sell in the shop called English muffins. I won't say the brand. And, some people have actually found that they've had a packet of these so-called English muffins in the back of their cupboard for 5 years and they haven't even gone moldy. I mean, what is that all about?
Oh my gosh, that is frightening.
Well, like Twinkies, you know, I was sort of part of that Twinkie generation, and they, you know, the Twinkies will be here for 10,000 years from now. They'll dig those up. But contrast that with sourdough bread. This has, you know, this won't go moldy either, but it's naturally preserved. Naturally preserved.
And the really amazing thing about sourdough is that you can eat it really rock hard, you can still stick it in the toaster and put some crushed avocado on it and some tomatoes, a bit of salt and pepper, even a poached egg, and it's just delicious, absolutely delicious. I am absolutely a total convert. I just want to be able to get hold of some organic whole grain flour, because I've managed to get the white organic flour from the supermarket, but I need to get the whole grain to be able to make this starter. So that's really quite important. But I just want
the nutrients are.
Yeah, absolutely. But just really going back on the whole kind of gut health and that sort of thing, just talk to me and explain to me, you know, whether you think that taking a pre or a probiotic is a good thing to protect our gut health. What's your opinion on that, Patricia?
Oh, that's a really good question. Really good, because we do see a lot about probiotics now over the last decade or so. So talking to people, they say, oh, I drink my little yogurt drink in the morning, I'm good with my probiotic. Well, actually our stomach acid destroys most of that. Same in a gel cap. The one reason they say, you know, a bazillion CFUs is because the stomach acid is going to erode that gel cap and destroy most of those bacteria. So we need to be very careful about the probiotics that we do take, because you can just be throwing money down the drain. The one that I take has a special coating, and then it's time released. And, you know, our whole body's covered with bacteria. You know, little warning here. Don't use those sprays that kill 99.9% of the bacteria, because you're just annihilating your immune system, your best defense. So we need to, so our body's covered with bacteria. Our eyes have different bacteria from our nose, from our ears, throat, you know, all over our body. So our colon, our intestines, as I mentioned, that farther down you go, the more concentration of bacteria you have. So those are specific bacteria all along that gastrointestinal tract. So the one I take is time released to deposit specific bacteria where they need to go. That is really key. And a good thing about sourdough bread, especially with the whole grain, is it's a great prebiotic. So did you know probiotics need to be fed? They need to be fed. What do they eat? Prebiotics.
There you go.
Like vegetables, you know, high fiber vegetables, and the fiber that comes from sourdough bread. So the white flour you mentioned it is great for making your starter. But you don't want to just bake with the white flours. You're missing out on the nutrients. You need the whole grain. But if you made it 100% whole grain, it'd probably be more dense than you really want. So good balance of the two.
Yeah, half and half. Well, that's amazing, because we will be talking about how to make a sourdough starter in another session with you. And I think what you've covered today is just incredible. The whole gut health, you know, how to look after your gut health. You mentioned the probiotic, the sustained release probiotic, how we can now activate our cellular pharmacy to do all of that clever stuff for us, but with the help of making your own bread. Wow, this is incredible, because actually once we've taught ourselves to look at labels and to look and identify what it actually is that doesn't serve a purpose within our bodies, then you look to substituting. And what better way to substitute your body with just, you know, an incredible sourdough handmade from all those traditional methods from years and years and years ago. So I think that is absolutely phenomenal. I think what we've talked about today has been so exciting and knowledgeable. And Patricia, you know, it's always so amazing to have you talk with so much passion about bread, and I can't wait to see how we make a sourdough starter, and let's kind of watch the process. And then we move on to fermenting vegetables and looking at things like that, which are all really gut related traditions that we can help to feed our bodies the full nutrients that we are not getting from, you know, everyday foods and vegetables. So really,
well, we're going back to what grandma did, aren't we?
absolutely.
People used to go to grandma when they weren't well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now that, you know, a lot of people are in lockdown, what are they doing? They're looking to do things that are occupying their time more traditionally. So a lot more baking, a lot more kind of cooking and things like that, back to what we used to do. So, you know, realistically, maybe there's some good that's come out of this pandemic. There's a lot of good that's come out of this pandemic. Well, you know, I personally have found it to be quite grounding, which has been amazing.
Very positive. Well, we've seen the planet respond during the first lockdown. Air pollution just drastically went down. I'm from California originally, where the sky is just brown. And it was so noticeable. China even noticed, you know, their air pollution levels drastically dropped. And you're right. I mean, flour went off the shelves in the stores. People were going back to baking because they were home long enough to do it.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely.
So if you know, it's just that if anyone's watching this and they're curious and they sort of not sure whether they might have sort of issues with what's in the bread, but might be curious about what Patricia is talking about and you know, making a starter for the sourdough, if that's something that you'd be interested in for Patricia to talk about, just let us know in the comments below and say yes, you would like to know. And I'm sure that we could, if we had enough people interested, we could persuade Patricia to share her secret on how to make the starter.
That'd be amazing.
Yes. Well, if you have some gut issues and you think, you know, I've been told not to eat bread. I've had tests and been told not to eat bread.
Yeah.
But you want to know a little bit more about, you know, what we're offering up and how we know the science behind it. You know, we're all about the science behind the fermentation process and what that means.
Yeah.
Or if you're questioning maybe your gut issue your gut could benefit from this, even get in touch with one of us in the comments, or if you know us personally or following us, and we can share.
That's absolutely brilliant. And I just want to thank you both for joining us today for our talk. And we will be back next Thursday to talk on another element of our health, activating our cellular pathway again, and following on from our sourdough and learning how to make it. So thank you for joining us today. It's been absolutely amazing. Again, thanks for your time, Patricia.
My pleasure.
Incredible as always. And the lovely Lee in Australia, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great week. And comments, please just let us know in the comments below if you have any questions. Okay, take care. Bye for now, everybody.
Bye. Bye.